The experience behind the techniques. I wrote this book so that you can use my experience for your child's benefit. It is packed with what we could call autism intel, the inside scoop on what is going on with your child and what you can do to address the core issues of your child's disorder. This information isn't limited to my personal story of recovery or my experience with James. It encompasses my experience working with children and families throughout my life and professionally since 1998, and the vast know-how contained in the decades of work done by the staff of the Autism Treatment Center of America. In my case, I've spent over 1,000 hours working individually with over 200 children on the autism spectrum, worked with over 1,000 families in depth, and addressed more than 15,000 people in lectures and seminars. And now, after serving as the CEO of the Autism Treatment Center of America from 2005 until 2010, I am its Director of Global Education. Many of the other senior staff at the ATCA have considerably more experience. My parents have been teaching the Sunrise program for 35 years, and several of the other senior teachers are approaching or exceeding 20 years. They have all worked with families from a vast assortment of cultures who have children with widely varying diagnoses spanning the entire age spectrum from toddlers to mature adults. It would not be an exaggeration to say that there is no type of situation that they have not seen. The knowledge and experience of all these devoted individuals stands behind every principle, strategy, and technique you will hear in this book. For these people, their work with families isn't a 9-to-5 job. It's their life. For example, my older sister Bryn and her husband William have been working at the ATCA for more than 20 years. But autism has also touched them in a very personal way, and I don't mean because Bryn had an autistic brother. When their daughter, Jade, was 2 years old, she began to exhibit a wide range of autistic behaviors. She would cry for hours. She had very little language. Her eye contact was rare, and her interest in people was fleeting. She was very sensitive to any sensory input, sights, sounds, and would scream when any sound became overwhelming or when too many people would look at her. She did not want to be touched. She spent much of her days engaged in repetitive stims, repeatedly lining up toys, or shaking a box filled with marbles using the exact same motion over and over again. Bryn and William set up a full-time Sunrise program for their daughter. I left my job running that educational center in Southern California and moved back to Massachusetts to be a part of Jade's program and to help out at the ATCA for what I thought at the time would be 1 year. For me, working with Jade was one of the high points of my life. I truly cannot do justice to this experience with words, though I will do my best. 2 aspects of my time with Jade made it very meaningful to me. The first is that, even with all of my personal and professional experience, I didn't fully grasp what the experience of having a special child and running a Sunrise program over time was like until I participated in Jade's program year after year. As I witnessed the intensive work, effort, creativity, and love that Bryn and William put into working with Jade, I developed a deeper, more profound understanding of exactly what my parents did for me. I have always been enormously grateful to them, but I just didn't get it on a visceral level until I had my time in Jade's program. And certainly, I internalized this understanding on yet another level during my later experience with Charlotte and James. The second facet of my experience that so moved me was Jade herself. I had such an amazing time with her. She was so precious, and I felt continually honored to step into her world over and over again. I found that when I was with her, I was able to bring forth the most loving, caring, and creative parts of myself. This emotional connection has affected every moment I have worked with children since. This is what I wrote back in 1999 about a pair of Sunrise program sessions I had with her, which took place 1 and 2 years into her program, respectively. September 1998. The boat lists from side to side as it makes its way through the wavy ocean. Jostling around in my seat, Barely able to keep myself from tumbling overboard, I look across the deck at Jade, who seems miraculously unaffected by the bounce and tip of the small, unstable boat. She sits in her self-constructed seat, staring intently at her stuffed animal, Ernie from Sesame Street, a small smile playing across her smooth, otherwise undisturbed features. To the untrained eye, our boat might appear to be a purple blanket laid out across a white carpet, with pillows arranged at one end and a makeshift chair and a single scarf perched at the other end. As far as I'm concerned, however, we are sitting on a real sailboat making its way haphazardly across a rough sea with our friends Ernie and Cookie Monster. Earlier, Jade had made herself a plush chair with her pillows, and when I asked her what I was to use for my chair, she casually deposited one of her scarves in my lap. And yet, despite the apparent disparity in the plushness of our chairs, I am incredibly excited. Not only am I greatly enjoying our time together, but I am now in the midst of a game that has gone on for almost 15 minutes. For Jade and I to be involved in a single interactive game for more than a few minutes is exceedingly rare, and I am savoring the experience. Jade is weaving in and out of her connection with me at this point, sometimes looking at me and speaking, other times staring at and playing with Ernie as if I'm not in the room with her. Seeing that she is now playing with Ernie and less involved in our boat game, I take Cookie Monster and begin to look at and talk to it quietly but excitedly. Slowly, out of the corner of my eye, I notice Jade slowly raising her head. Her eyes lock onto me, and for a moment, we both sit there, holding our stuffed animals and staring at one another. Then the imaginary boat rocks again, and I go tumbling overboard. Jade continues to eye me curiously, and so I reach up from where I'm lying on the carpet and ask her to help me climb back into the boat. She turns away from me and resumes her solitary play with Ernie. August 1999. The boat bounces around as it traverses the turbulent ocean. As I am being tossed from side to side by the motion of the boat, I glance across at Jade. She, too, is rocking around in the boat. "This boat rocking around in water, Ron. Waves are coming in," Jade says. "Here, Jadey, let's pull this sheet over us so that we don't get all wet," I say as I wipe some ocean water from my face. She grabs her sheet and pulls it over her. "You come in here, Ron. You come in close to me." I scramble underneath the sheet next to her, and she slings an arm around me with great nonchalance. "Thanks, Jade. You're a good friend," I say gratefully. Jade smiles at me. I can barely contain my excitement. Jade is being so sweet, so cuddly, so interactive. What's more, the two of us have been playing this particular game for over an hour. Suddenly, another wave comes crashing into the boat, and I roll overboard. "Hey, Jade! I'm in the water here. Can you help me out? Can you help me back into the boat?" I reach up from the carpet, and she grabs onto me with both hands and hauls me back into the boat. "Thanks for helping me, Jade-alicious. Whew!" Jade looks at me quizzically. "Why you say whew?" Such a simple question, but on this particular day, it got me thinking. Jade helped me climb into her boat. We're helping her climb into our boat, as my parents helped me climb into their boat so many years ago. So much distance traveled, so many people lining the path. Such a journey for one little girl. How could I not say, phew? Jade progressed more slowly than I had, but progress she did. 5 years later, her program was finished. Now a social young adult with lots of friends and a great sense of humor, you would never guess her unique and special past. Now, upon hearing this story, you couldn't be blamed for thinking that maybe Jade was predisposed to autism because she was related to me, and that, furthermore, maybe she had a better shot at recovery for the same reason. However, you could only think this because you are missing a crucial element of the story. Bryn and William adopted Jade when she was 8 weeks old. It was not until 2 years later that she began to show symptoms of autism. Isn't that incredible? View a documentary of Jade's journey at www.autismbreakthrough.org www.chapter1. So, no matter what you have been told, please know that there is hope for your child. Of course, people who don't know your child will see what your child does not do, and they will speak as if they know what your child cannot do. But you are the parent. You have a love, a lifelong commitment, and an everyday experience with your child that no one else can match. You may sometimes feel dismissed or brushed aside, but nothing can change the fact that you aren't in the way, you are the way. The only reason I can talk to you today is because my parents believed in me when no one else on earth did. So you keep believing in your child without apology. You have every right to have hope for your child, to see the potential within your child, and to want more for your child. I am continually flabbergasted at some people's sincere and strenuous concern about parents of children on the autism spectrum being given false hope. I continue to be befuddled as to what they think hope will do that is so harmful to our children. Who decided that a life sentence was better than an open heart and an outstretched hand? The bottom line is this: hope leads to action. Without action, none of our children can be helped. I hear people complaining about false hope, but I never hear anyone worrying about false pessimism. There is broad agreement that we don't want anyone promising a particular outcome for a particular child ahead of time. Why then do we abide people making promises about what a child will never do? Why is it that telling a parent all the things that will not happen for his or her 4-year-old or 10-year-old or 15-year-old over the next 6 decades is perfectly sensible, but giving every one of these kids a chance is deemed false hope? Any one of you listening to this book right now knows that if there is one problem that families with children on the autism spectrum are not facing in our society, it is an epidemic of too much hope for their children. Of course, no one knows in advance what your child will accomplish, but let's not decide in advance what your child will not achieve. Let's give your child every chance. Together, we'll spend the rest of this book doing just that. Chapter 2. Joining. Entering your child's world. Okay, so where to start? Well, if you're listening to this book, I'm going to go ahead and assume that 1. You have a child on the autism spectrum. 2. You love your child. 3. You want to help your child. Pretty obvious, I know. But what might be less obvious is just how much power you have to impact your child's growth and development. This book will give you some very simple and clear techniques you can use to help your child progress. In some cases, these strategies may sound like the exact opposite of what you have been told to do. This is no accident. Many of them are the exact opposite. That's okay. Nothing to get nervous about. In fact, quite the opposite. This may be the best news you've heard in quite a while. Why? Because if what you were doing was working, then you wouldn't be reading this book, would you? And if this book was just going to reiterate what you've already heard or thought of, it wouldn't be useful to you. So that means that the first order of business is to fully acknowledge the following. The path you have been on thus far hasn't gotten your child where you want her to be. Let's head down a brand new path. What autism is, really? Most of what parents are told about autism is not accurate or, unfortunately, helpful. Sure, whoever diagnosed your child may have told you the symptoms of autism and how your child's behaviors match those symptoms, but I'm not talking about symptoms. I'm talking about the central aspect of what autism is. First, let's talk about what autism is not. It is not a behavioral disorder. This is important because 99% of the time, that's exactly how it's treated. The methodologies used on our children tend to focus on behavior change. Practitioners ask, how can we stamp out or eliminate this behavior and train the child to do that behavior? The problem is, autism is not a behavioral disorder. It is a social relational disorder. Do our kids behave differently? Sure, but those behaviors are symptoms, not causes. If you saw someone scratching his arm and then set as your goal the elimination of the scratching behavior, there are a number of approaches you might try. You might tell the person to stop scratching. You might threaten him with an unpleasant consequence if he continues scratching. You might try to distract him by putting something he wants, an ice cream cone for instance, in the hand he is using to scratch. You might even tie his arm to his body so that he couldn't scratch. Or you could actually look for the reason for his scratching and discover that he has a mosquito bite. Then you could put some anti-itch cream on the bite. Voila! No more scratching. And instead of not addressing the real issue while at the same time totally alienating the person, you solve the cause of the scratching and the person is grateful. This analogy illustrates the difference between trying to stamp out your child's symptoms and addressing your child's core challenge. Every autistic behavior your child exhibits is a symptom. Trying to extinguish these behaviors does not address the actual autism and only serves to seriously disrupt the trust and relationship between you and your child. This trust and relationship is your most important asset in helping your child progress. Why? Because autism is a social relational disorder. What does this mean exactly? Well, the primary challenge that your child has is a difficulty bonding and forming relationships with others. I say child regardless of your child's age because she is your child even as an adult. There are a few different reasons for this, which we will go over later, but for now, know this. Almost every other issue your child faces stems from this one challenge. This is why, if you take a 5-year-old nonverbal child labeled severely autistic and a 16-year-old adolescent with Asperger's syndrome, you won't in most cases find a single behavior in common. These two people will look and act very, very differently from one another, and yet they are both on the autism spectrum. What do they have in common then? They both have difficulty communicating, making eye contact, reading nonverbal cues, dealing with people and social situations, coping with high levels of sensory stimulation, and being flexible with changing circumstances and with other people's wishes and agendas. Also, they both have powerful interests, labeled by some as obsessions, that they can engage in for long periods of time, often seeming oblivious to the interests of others. Isn't that interesting? No behaviors in common, yet a whole array of underlying challenges in common. So regardless of where your child is on the spectrum, he or she has the same key deficits. This is actually a good thing. You may not see it as a good thing right this second. That's okay. But really, it is. It means that by addressing this one area, you are also tackling almost every other challenge that your child faces. It also means that everything in this book is designed to enable you to help your child grow and learn while going with instead of against your child, bonding more with your child instead of doing battle with him. This leads us to a most important, paradoxically logical idea. Overcoming autism is not about getting your child to change his behaviors. Really. A total reversal. First, we want to change the question we ask ourselves when seeking to help our child. Instead of asking, what do I need to do in order to change my child's behavior? We want to ask, what do I need to do in order to create a relationship with my child? Once we ask this question, everything changes. Our whole approach shifts. You want to begin to focus on doing your very best to see through your child's eyes. I'm not asking you to be psychic here. I'm talking about imagining with every single interaction you have with your child what this might feel like for your child. When you stop your child from stimming, how might that feel for her? When you take him to a noisy park and he's covering his ears, how do you think that is for him? When your child seems engrossed in tearing paper into tiny strips, what do you think that experience is like for her? When your child talks incessantly about windmills, what is it that he loves so much about them? We want everything we do with our children from now on to be in service to bonding and relationship building. This means that you want to make being part of our world extremely appealing to your child. You want interacting with others to feel totally non-threatening, fun, exciting, and satisfying to your child. In fact, you want to sell human interaction. I mean, really sell it. If you went up to your child and said, "Dude, I've got the best deal to offer you. It's called being part of our world, and it's really awesome. You know what the best part is? When you join us in our world, you get to stop doing all the stuff you love and start doing all the stuff you hate." Doesn't that sound fantastic? Now, no child or adult on earth is going to take that deal, and yet that's the deal we usually offer. It's time for a total reversal. Instead of focusing on your child conforming to your world, you want to become a student of your child's world. Let your child be the teacher. Of course, you have many, many things you want to teach your child. A number of the upcoming chapters will help you with exactly that. But if you ever want to get to a place where your child is actually interested in what you and others have to offer, you must first build trust and form a bond on your child's own terms. You've got to build a bridge to your child's world first. Only then can you take your child's hand and guide her back across that bridge to your world. This is why the Sunrise program is guided by the following principle. The children show us the way in, and then we show them the way out. Okay, so how do we do that? Everybody loves the second half of this sentence. Yes, I want to show my child the way out. I want to get my child to look at me, communicate, learn new things, be more neurotypical. However, it is right here that the first and primary mistake is usually made. With children on the autism spectrum, you can't just yank them out of their world and into ours. You can't force them to learn or grow or change, and you certainly cannot make them want to interact with other people. Joining. So, if we want to show our children the way out, then we must begin by focusing on the first half of that sentence. This means that rather than forcing these children to conform to a world that they do not understand, we begin by joining them in their world. In this way, we establish a mutual connection and relationship, which is the platform for all education and growth. And this leads to our first key technique, joining. What is joining? Well, you know all of those stimming behaviors that everyone is trying to get your child to stop doing? Not only do we not stop these behaviors, but we join in with and participate in those very same behaviors. When your child performs his or her repetitive, autistic-looking behaviors, you are going to do them too. When your child lines up blocks, you will get some blocks of your own and line them up too. When your child shakes a pen while making an "ee" sound, you will do the same. When your child is stimming, you are going to stim with him. And yes, children and adults with Asperger's syndrome do stim. They just do it differently, as we'll discuss in Chapter 15. I've often heard the concern from people who have not yet tried this technique that joining will reinforce the very behaviors that we want the child to stop. The idea is that joining will supposedly teach your child that her repetitive behaviors are appropriate, leading to more of these behaviors. However, once you have joined your child the way we do it in the Sunrise program, which we'll get into shortly, you will see firsthand that the last thing on earth it leads to is more stimming. At the Autism Treatment Center of America, we have been joining children and adults for decades. Kids from Great Britain and Nigeria, from Germany and Japan, from Argentina and across the United States, 2-year-olds and 32-year-olds, kids labeled severe and kids deemed mild. We have never, ever seen it make anyone more autistic. We've never seen it lead to increased stimming. In fact, we see the opposite. The more we join a child, the less that child stims. Time and time again, we join children and then watch as these children look at us more, pay more attention to us, smile at us more, participate with us more, and become steadily less interested in the stimming behavior by which they previously seemed so captivated. When my mother began joining me, she was told that this was unwise and would lead to more stimming. She was told to say no, take the plate away, and redirect my behavior whenever I put a plate on the floor and spun it on its edge for hours at a time. To my eternal gratitude, she didn't listen. She wanted so much to peek into my world. She wanted so fervently to show me that she loved me, to connect with me. She got her own plate, and she spun with me. That was when I began looking at her, smiling at her, and becoming more interested in her. An analogy. To illustrate why joining works, let me give you an analogy. I want you to imagine that you've had a hard, busy week and you are totally out of steam. I'm sure that won't be difficult for you. Finally, Saturday arrives. Lo and behold, you have the day to yourself, a day off. Okay, that might be harder for you to imagine, but go with me here. Your spouse, or someone else if that doesn't apply, is covering the kids and you can do what you wish. So you go to a nice local park and you take your favorite book by your favorite author to read. You sit down on one of the benches, get out your book, and begin reading. It's a beautiful day out and you're totally comfortable. As you read, you finally begin to decompress from your trying week. You start to relax. You become absorbed in your book, tuning out all of the events of the week and the formidable list of things you have to do when you get back home. You're at ease. Then I approach you. Hey, what's up? I ask in a loud voice. How you doing? Listen, I've been watching you read and you've been at it for quite a while. You know, this isn't the best way to spend your day being kind of antisocial and not really doing anything. I'll tell you what, let's forget about the book and go see a movie. There's a great flick playing just down the road. My treat. How about it? You look up at me, a little annoyed. Look, I've had a very intense week. I finally got a day to myself. I just want to hang out here and read. Thanks for the offer, though. I stare at you, a bit dumbfounded. I'm making a great offer, and movies are fun. Why aren't you putting your book down and going with me? Maybe I just haven't adequately gotten your attention yet. So I stand right in front of where you're sitting and squat down so that my face is at eye level with yours. I take my hand and push your book aside so you can see me. Hi, I say. Can you look at me? Over here, over here. I snap my fingers in the direction you're looking and bring my hand back to my face. Hi, I'm over here. Listen, the movie is starting in 15 minutes. Come on, stand up, let's go. We're going to the movies. Now you're getting pretty peeved with me. You stand up and face me. Hey, look, buddy, back off. Okay, I've had a tough week. I just want to read my book in peace. If I wanted to use my one day off to see a movie, that's probably what I'd be doing, okay? So just leave me alone. I just want to read my book in peace. Suddenly, I have a realization. What was I thinking? How could I have missed this? I know what the problem is. The problem is your book. It's clearly very distracting to you. I mean, you keep staring and staring at it. You're kind of obsessed with it. So if I just take the book away from you, problem solved. I snatch the book out of your hands. You try to grab it back, but I pull it back out of your reach. I tell you, you'll get the book back after you go to the movies with me. Okay. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going to happen next. The very last thing that's going to happen is you deciding to come to the movies with me. In fact, next Saturday, if you see me approaching, you're going to grab your book and run the other way. Your child's experience. Now, the important thing to understand here is that this problematic situation is not occurring because I'm trying to make your life difficult. Quite the opposite. I'm trying to help you. My intentions are good. I genuinely believe that it's not healthy for you to sit by yourself all day, and I'm endeavoring to get you to do something I think will be better for you. I have the very best of intentions. The problem is, you're not a mind reader, so you don't know my reasons and intentions. All you know about me is two things. 1, I'm right up in your face. 2, I keep giving you the same message over and over. And that message is, stop doing what you want, do what I want. Now let's take a moment and step behind your child's eyes. If your child has an autism spectrum disorder, two big things are happening. I'm not saying these are the only things going on with your child, but they are two of the biggies. The first is that your child has difficulty processing and making sense of sensory input. This means that he sees, hears, smells, tastes, and feels things very differently than you or I do. When your child hears something, for instance, it sounds louder, softer, or just plain different than what you hear. If you take a moment right now and just listen in silence to any background noise, you may notice a lot of little sounds. Cars, wind, the heater or air conditioner, a TV or a conversation in another room, etc. You probably didn't notice all of these noises until just now. That's as it should be. The human ear is bombarded by a continuous cacophony of sounds. One of the brain's chief tasks is to filter out irrelevant sounds and filter in the important sounds, such as your spouse/boyfriend/girlfriend talking. Well, at least we'd call that sound important most of the time. With your child, all of those noises are coming in at the same volume. It doesn't work in exactly this way, but this is the closest approximation to your child's experience that we can get into right now. So when you tell your child to pay attention and listen, what exactly should he listen to? Which of the 25 sounds is your child supposed to pay attention to? This is your child's experience day in and day out. You know how you feel after you've spent the day at an airport? Tired, overwhelmed, like you just want to veg out? Well, your child wakes up, has breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then goes to sleep in the middle of a busy airport. Even if it's just your living room, it's an airport to your child. This is why making a big effort to see things through your child's eyes is so important. You may have a child who likes to take his clothes off and run around naked. He may step into the house and tear all his clothes off. You may ask yourself, why is my child misbehaving? He knows he's supposed to keep his clothes on. The thing is, your child is not misbehaving. His clothes probably feel like sandpaper, and he is taking them off just to get some relief. When I was little, I used to see and hear things very differently. I would test deaf on hearing tests, even though the tests were monitoring involuntary responses from my eyelids and skin. At the same time, I would mimic a song that was playing on a television show being watched in a distant room. I can remember things being visually different to me at times, and this continued to occur from time to time for a couple of years after my recovery. For instance, sometimes when I looked at a person's face, it would look like I was looking through the wrong end of a pair of binoculars. The person's face would look like it was far away and down a tunnel. Sound strange to you? Welcome to your child's world. The second big issue that your child faces is that she has difficulty recognizing patterns. This means that everyday occurrences that seem predictable and understandable to you and me seem random and haphazard to your child. That's why your child is constantly seeking familiarity and routine. If I walk up to you and say, "Hi," and stick out my right hand, you know, without even thinking about it, that I am greeting you and trying to shake your hand. You know how this works and you know what to do. If I did that with your child, in most cases, I'm just some guy thrusting his hand out. Your child doesn't necessarily know what this is or what to do. What's worse is that everyone thinks that she should know what to do and is annoyed or upset when she doesn't. Your child is living in an unpredictable, confounding, and tumultuous world. Any of us facing the latter challenge, would endeavor to cope in ways similar, though less extreme, to how our children behave. We've all been in situations, such as being in a foreign country, where we have encountered small versions of these challenges. The people don't speak our language. They have cultural traditions that seem unfathomable, yet we're expected to follow them. Even flushing the strangely arranged toilet can seem like an exercise in code breaking. Why can't everything just be understandable? And why won't people get off my back and stop expecting me to obey rules I don't understand? Often in these situations, we become less social. We seek to wall ourselves in, and we seek familiarity and control. The same is true for many of us when we start a new job, move to a new area, or marry into a family that's very different from ours. This is exactly what your child does. In fact, your child is so brilliant and so creative that he has come up with a way to handle both challenges at once. The STEM. How does the STEM do that? First, it enables your child to focus intently on one thing so that he can most effectively tune out the sensory bombardment that he is experiencing every moment of every day. Interestingly, this is the same reason why some people meditate. Second, by doing the exact same thing over and over in a way that he can control, your child is, in essence, creating an island of predictability in an ocean of randomness. So you see, your child is actually addressing both neurological issues with one behavior. He is doing the best, smartest thing he can possibly do to address what's going on for him. In reality, your child is not behaving abnormally. Your child is behaving extremely normally in the face of the abnormal situation that he is facing. Isn't that amazing? Back to the analogy. Let's return to our analogy for a few moments. Now, suppose you are sitting on your bench in the park, reading your favorite book by your favorite author, just like before. This time I approach, sit down on the same bench, and begin reading a book I've brought with me. I don't say anything to you. I'm busy reading my book. After a while, you glance over at me, and then you notice something startling. Jole frijoles! You can't believe it, but it appears that I am reading the very same book that you are. You try to go back to reading your book, but you keep thinking of how unbelievable it is that I'm reading not just the same book as you, but your favorite book. After glancing over at me for the 10th time, you can't resist. You have to at least ask me about it. So you tap me on the shoulder and ask me why I'm reading this book, do I like it, do I read many books by this author, etc. I enthusiastically answer you, and we fall into a discussion of our favorite books and why we love them. Then it's time for me to go. I say goodbye and leave. The next Saturday, you're sitting on the bench reading, and along I come again with my book. We read a bit, chat a bit, then part ways. The same process happens again the following Saturday and the one after that. Then, after several Saturdays of this, we're sitting and talking on the bench, and I say, hey, check this out. Next weekend, the movie version of this book we've been reading is coming out. Isn't that awesome? Listen, how about next Saturday, instead of reading here, we meet at the movie theater and watch that movie? Do you see what happened? Notice that in both scenarios, I'm ultimately asking you to do the exact same thing. However, the way I got there is totally different. In the first scenario, it's all about stop doing what you want, do what I want. I have no interest in building a relationship with you, let alone trust. In the second scenario, I spend a lot of time building a meaningful relationship with you before I ask you to do anything. What's more, we are building this relationship around a common interest. This is important because although the Sunrise program was unique in pioneering this idea with respect to autism, this is not at all new when it comes to how human beings relate to one another. Forming relationships based upon a common interest, combined with reciprocity, the two-way street of I go your way, then you go mine, has been the way human beings have been creating relationships for thousands of years. What is incredible is not that we would use this model, but that it is still controversial to use it with children whose main challenge is creating relationships. It seems almost too obvious to state that if a child has a social relational disorder, we would want to use bonding and relationship building techniques with that child rather than techniques that do the opposite. Moreover, there is a growing body of research suggesting that, for our children, stimming has all sorts of positive effects on the nervous system, calming, regulating, and relaxing it. And what do we do when our children finally find something to calm themselves, self-regulate, and effectively cope with their environment? Quiet hands. Don't do that. Put that down. Do this instead. To be clear, we do this to help our children. We do this because we love our children. But through their eyes, it's not helpful and it's not loving. At the Autism Treatment Center of America, we had a little girl named Carrie in our Sunrise Program Intensive, a program where we work directly with the child, which you'll hear more about later, who would flap her hands by the outside edges of her eyes near her temples. I've changed Carrie's name and the names of all the kids in this book. Her parents, who loved their daughter very much, were constantly trying to stop her from flapping. "Quiet hands, honey," they would say, and then they would gently take her wrists and push her hands down to her sides. We taught Carrie's parents to use joining to help her, but that's not why I'm telling you about her. I'm telling you this because later on, Carrie was examined by an ophthalmologist who told her parents that the rods in her retinas were defective. You have rods and cones in your retinas. Cones see colors in straight ahead, rods see in black and white, peripheral vision, and are involved in depth perception. This doctor went on to explain that when Carrie flapped her hands at the outside edge of her vision, she was stimulating the rods in her retinas, thereby helping herself to see better as she navigated around a room, a sidewalk, etc. So this little girl was just trying to see, and everyone around her, trying, of course, to help her, was saying, "Quiet hands," and pulling her hands away from her eyes. A boy named Vincent would get on the floor, pull a ball or pillow underneath his stomach, and roll back and forth for hours. As with Carrie, his parents, teachers, and therapists all tried to discourage him from doing this. Later, Vincent's parents were told by a physician that he had severe chronic indigestion that was probably causing a great deal of stomach pain. So Vincent was just trying to give himself some relief. If your child is doing something for hours on end every day, surely there is a purpose to what she is doing. She is not stimming, or doing anything else for that matter, for no reason. There is always a reason and a purpose. Otherwise, she wouldn't be doing it over and over. You see, it's hard to see the purpose and usefulness of our children's behaviors when we're trying to stamp out the behaviors. This, in fact, is another benefit of joining. It enables us, often for the first time, to get a window into our child's world. It gives us the opportunity to see the reasons for our child's behaviors. It allows us to begin to answer the question, why is my child doing this? What is he or she getting out of it?